over the last few years it's been attacked and talked about is what's called qualified immunity for law enforcement, for police officers. And what qualified immunity is the protections that police officers, law enforcement have against being sued as an individual for things that you do on the job. And in the US, you have qualified immunity, pretty substantial ones, that if it is determined that you are within your scope of duty of your job, acting in your scope of duty, and you are operating in good faith, that any mistakes or things like that were considered job and you were not liable as an individual. And there's been a push to eliminate those or degrade those in the United States from some directions. What I saw in countries like Bolivia that did not have those protections is that law enforcement officers, the cops I were working with, refused or would not do cases against the most important criminal organizations, because these criminal organizations and their attorneys could just threaten to sue them. And whether it had merit or not, these officers were threatened with losing their house, their livelihood, everything that they held dear on a personal level. And so they weren't willing to risk all that to do these cases. But I realized a lot of times I would see a case from my vantage point that I thought was a case that should be easy to investigate, to pursue. And I could not figure out why my cops were reluctant to do it. It took a while to figure out, in order to operate effectively in a foreign country, first of all, you have to know their language. And language is much more important than understanding what they're saying, because the use of language and how they use it and understanding it in the way they use it or how they employ it is a window into how their mindset and what they're thinking. And to understand the culture and all those things that go into, to understand deeply the legal system and all the things that go into the legal system and allow them to do things and not. One of the biggest mistakes that new agents coming into a foreign country would be is all those things I just mentioned, they didn't understand, and they never figured out how to see the reasons why things weren't getting done and to be able to tease apart and work through those issues that were the impediments. Because in order to do that, the language, the culture, and the legal system and the political system, you have to know that. For my 6 years in Bolivia, and especially the first year, it was like getting information through a fire hose. It was so much to learn, to understand before I felt I could get a handle on understanding what was going on and how to attack a lot of these problems. I really was able to make progress when I really started to understand. I always felt that as a foreign law enforcement going to these countries, that when you first go there, you're looking at everything through a thick veil, that you never really, you kind of see what's going on, but you don't really understand. What appears to be going on rarely is what actually is going on beneath the surface or behind the veil. So slowly but surely, as you're in a country with time and effort, because it takes both, you start peeling back this layered veil, and it becomes clear to you what the true problems, what the true challenges are. So for instance, what I was talking about, the difficulties of doing a case against a certain target, could it be corruption? That's one that you always had to look at. Could it be laziness? Or could it be something else like what I talked to, which is legitimate fear of reprisals, which is either a safety issue, which in the United States, although we do an unsafe job as compared to most civilians, our job as DEA agents, because there is the force of the US government and most criminal organizations know that it's better not to attack a federal agent because all hell's going to break loose and you're going to bring so much heat if you do there's kind of an unwritten understanding that from a criminal standpoint that we are not going to do that because it's just going to hurt us more in the long run. That's not necessarily there in a foreign country. So you have these cops who are willing to do the job with those protections that I just talked about, either not there or they're so weak that as to be a real problem. Yet what I saw over and over again is these cops, sometimes not for whatever reason, sometimes legitimate, what I talked, some illegitimate corruption or laziness, but overall, I saw cops that were willing to go forward and to go toe-to-toe with these criminal organizations despite those real threats to them, both physically, financially, and otherwise.